What's up, cool people? My name's Matt, aka That Random Christian Gamer, and I am randomly kind of sick. But I'm not letting that keep me away from my Bible study stream because, A, one should not get out of a habit just because of a minor illness, but also because I have other stuff planned this weekend and I'm not quite sure when I would fit it in. I mean, I guess I could try to tack it on to tomorrow's live stream, assuming I still do that. But yeah, today is just Bible study, and it's probably going to be a really short Bible study stream because the first chapter is very short. But anyway, hello Seth, hope you're doing well, and I appreciate the well wishes for my health. But yeah, so just Bible study tonight, 2 chapters of 2nd Chronicles, like we've been going through, and we'll see how long that takes us, but I'm guessing it's going to be less than an hour. Yeah, so I didn't necessarily mention this in the Discord before I started up the stream, but I still, to my knowledge, am being asked to go into work for a little bit tomorrow, and earlier is probably better. So, all the more reason to have my stream be short, concise, and end early. But anyway, I don't want to assume I'm going to feel better and more up to doing this another day. Anywho, enough just saying whatever random thought comes to my mind. I'll go ahead and run the early Twitch ads, and then we will get the Bible study rolling here. Oh, man. But yeah, so I think really my illness started off last night. I just had like the biggest sneezing fit ever, well, that I've had, pretty much. And just like pretty much for a couple of hours leading to when I went to bed, it was yeah. I just couldn't stop sneezing, went to bed, stopped sneezing, but, you know, still got stuffy, runny nose, sore throat, all the usual common cold kind of stuff. Plus, I'm feeling a little bit achy. The thermometer that I currently have is so old it basically doesn't work anymore because it's a digital one. And those stop working when the battery dies. So I have no clue if I have a fever or not. The aches would lean me towards maybe a little bit. But anyway. So yeah, Seth, I'm like, if I were just feeling like this and didn't have work stuff to do tomorrow, maybe I would keep going a little bit after the Bible study, but nah. With work tomorrow, I'm thinking not so much. I want to get as much rest as I reasonably can. So, anywho, I suppose we'll get things rolling with our Bible study. Alrighty. We are looking at 2nd Chronicles 27. Chronicling, as the name of the book implies, events from various kings of Judah, pretty much right on down the line, kind of giving the exiles from Judah a timeline of how they got to their current situation, being exiled. And also throwing some not so subtle hints in there for the people to get back to following God, maybe even building the temple and other things of that sort. But, yeah, so we've had some good and bad kings at this point. The past few have been, like, starting out okay to decent for the most part, and then just kind of do a little bit of something that, or a lot of something that just has their connection to God drop off the face of a cliff. And or with the last king, I think, he went into the temple to burn incense when he wasn't supposed to, and so he got struck with leprosy by God. To the point where he was even buried separate from the other kings that were honorable, just because of the leprosy. But yeah, that's where we find ourselves for 2 Chronicles 27, so here we go. Jotham was 25 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 16 years. His mother was Jerusha, the daughter of Zadok. Zadok the priest, I assume? There's no other Zadok that I'm aware of, but it could be another one. In any case. Tangent done. Verse 2. Jotham did what was pleasing in the Lord's sight. He did everything his father Uzziah had done, except that Jotham did not sin by entering the temple of the Lord. But the people continued in their corrupt ways. Jotham rebuilt the upper gate of the temple of the Lord. He also did extensive rebuilding on the wall at the hill of Ophel. He built towns in the hill country of Judah and constructed fortresses and towers in the wooded areas. Jotham went to war against the Ammonites and conquered them. Over the next 3 years, he received from them an annual tribute of 7,500 pounds of silver, 50,000 bushels of wheat, and 50,000 bushels of barley. King Jotham became powerful because he was careful to live in obedience to the Lord his God. The rest of the events of Jotham's reign, including all his wars and other activities, are recorded in the Book of the Kings of Israel and Judah. He was 25 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 16 years. When Jotham died, he was buried in the city of David, and his son Ahaz became the next king. And that is literally the entire chapter, at least the text from the entire chapter. We got a couple of footnotes to look at and some thoughts of mine to maybe share. So, yeah, like, Uzziah, Jotham's father, was king in the last chapter. He generally did what was good, but that one incident with burning incense in the temple, not good. Jotham did not slip up that way. And of course, if his mother was the daughter of Zadok the priest, that makes extra sense as to why he would be less inclined to deviate from God's commands that way. So he did a bunch of things to help restore Jerusalem and fortify Judah and all sorts of stuff like that, which was good. And of course, he himself, morally, was good. I mean, none of us are perfect, but still good, generally dedicated to the Lord. But right there's the little bit of a hang up, like the one major way he could have done better. Because previous kings had indeed put some effort into not only following God themselves, but leading the other people of Judah to follow God. But yeah, he rebuilt a gate and other things. He built towns in the hill country, conquered the Ammonites, from which he received annual tributes, 7,500 pounds. The note there says it's 100 talents in the Hebrew. And for the bushels of, I'm going to assume, wheat and barley, Hebrew says 10,000 cores. Which, just I'm sure there were conversions there based on the common understanding of the Hebrew quantities. That the Hebrew quantities represented by those measurements. So I guess each core would have been 5 bushels of wheat. Now, how much is a bushel? I'm not sure I could tell you that right off the top of my head. But, I mean, 50,000 certainly seems like quite a bit. And if it tracks at all with the amount of silver that was given, it probably is quite a bit. Key takeaway from this chapter, I would say, is verse 6. Especially the part where it says, because he was careful to live in obedience to the Lord his God. Now, it's not like today we, as Christians, would need to be worried about following every little, dot that's written in the Bible perfectly. In fact, I think most of the Bible shows us that that isn't really possible on our own. But there's still like a general sense of trying to live the way God would want us to, in this day and age. And I'm not going to say things will necessarily be better in your life because of that, but odds are, because of your closer and more consistent connection to God, they will not feel as bad when troubles come. They will not feel as bad because we're going to go through hard times either way. Okay. Tangent done, but still, I think it's a relevant takeaway and mindset to look at when reading verses like this. Because I doubt, God absolutely expected 100% perfection, or he would have struck them dead. Now, the situation is different because of Jesus, and we don't have to, go on making sacrifices to atone for what we do wrong, like they did back then. But still within a similar idea, if we are repentant of our wrongdoing, if we, seek to be in a close relationship with God, the other things that God wants from us will develop. And then we can be counted among the righteous or obedient, as this word might say. But don't just listen to what I'm saying. Read, study, think, question for yourself. And that'll honestly grow your own relationship with God anyway. These last few verses, I don't know if there really is anything that I would say stands out. He was buried in the city of David, probably actually near the other honorable kings, unlike his father was because of the leprosy. And then it is confirmed that his son becomes the next king, or became from our present perspective. Anyway, okay, there's chapter 27 for you of 2nd Chronicles. Okay. You'll have to pardon me for just a moment. I'm going to mute my microphone as I slide over here for a sec, grab a tissue, and, try to clear up my nose a little bit. Alrighty. Chapter 28 is a bit longer. I will perhaps want to refrain from going off on tangents like I did in the previous chapter, just for my own sake. But, yeah. I've got, like, the whole, like, all the, well, not all the symptoms you could think of, but, yeah, nose stuff, throat stuff, aches, kind of, all over. So, pardon me for wanting to make this a bit, speedy. But here we go. 2nd Chronicles 28. Okay. We're at 2nd Chronicles 28 now. Last chapter was short, but I guess maybe that's because the king mentioned in the last chapter, Jotham, was relatively good. Maybe not the absolute best at leading the rest of the people of Judah to worship God, but he himself definitely worshipped the Lord and did good things. So, and that's kind of, I guess the past couple of kings, you could say, have been trending a little bit upward in terms of their devotion to the Lord. Because, you know, Jotham was all around pretty good. His father Uzziah was mostly good, kind of did one thing that wasn't so great later on in his life. And then before him, his father, whose name I am blanking on at the moment, he, like, started off good to okay, and then started worshiping other gods partway through his rule. So the trend has been going upward. But we'll have to see what happens in this chapter, because that doesn't necessarily mean that things will continue trending that way. So here we go. 2nd Chronicles 28. Ahaz was 20 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 16 years. Same amount of time as his father. Anyway, he did not do what was pleasing in the sight of the Lord, as his ancestor David had done. Instead, he followed the example of the kings of Israel. He cast metal images for the worship of Baal. He offered sacrifices in the valley of Ben Hinnom, even sacrificing his own sons in the fire. In this way, he followed the detestable practices of the pagan nations the Lord had driven from the land ahead of the Israelites. He offered sacrifices and burned incense at the pagan shrines and on the hills and under every green tree. Now, if you're not caught up on 2nd Chronicles, you might be like, wait, there's this king Ahaz, but then there's a separate king of Israel? Yes. After Solomon, there was a split, with Judah and Benjamin essentially being one kingdom under one king, that was Solomon's son. But the rest of the tribes broke off, formed their own kingdom, because they didn't want to continue working hard and being heavily taxed. And those other tribes turned away from God real quick. Of course, Jerusalem, being in Judah, had the temple, so, you know, there were more built-in influences for them to continue worshiping God. But Ahaz is not following that example. He's acting like the kings of the other tribes did. Sacrificing to other gods, making images / idols for them, and it says even sacrificing his own sons in the fire. Let's read the note there. Could be read as even making his sons pass through the fire. Now that definitely doesn't sound as harsh, but either way, it was a ritual from another people group who worshipped another god. Therefore, it was still bad in God's eyes. So that I mentioned things were trending upward, and they're back down now as far as dedication to God. So yeah, I guess we'll continue on with verse 5 after I get a little sip of water here. Because of all this, the Lord his God allowed the king of Aram to defeat Ahaz and to exile large numbers of his people to Damascus. The armies of the king of Israel also defeated Ahaz and inflicted many casualties on his army. In a single day, Pekah, son of Remaliah, Israel's king, killed 120,000 of Judah's troops, all of them experienced warriors, because they had abandoned the Lord, the God of their ancestors. Then Zikri, a warrior from Ephraim, killed Maaseiah, the king's son, Azrikam, the king's palace commander, and Elkanah, the king's second in command. The armies of Israel captured 200,000 women and children from Judah and seized tremendous amounts of plunder, which they took back to Samaria. But a prophet of the Lord named Oded was there in Samaria when the army of Israel returned home. He went out to meet them and said, "The Lord, the God of your ancestors, was angry with Judah and let you defeat them. But you have gone too far, killing them without mercy, and all heaven is disturbed. And now you are planning to make slaves of these people from Judah and Jerusalem. What about your own sins against the Lord your God? Listen to me and return these prisoners you have taken, for they are your own relatives. Watch out, because now the Lord's fierce anger has been turned against you." I assume there was a bit of an emphasis on the word "you" there, distinguishing that, all right, yes, it was against Judah before, but now it's turning more so towards you yourselves, Israel. So, yeah, lots of casualties, big losses for Judah. But I guess thanks to Oded, they might have actually gotten to, keep all or most of the people who survived. Yeah. Like, the phrase "two wrongs doesn't make a right" is coming to mind right here. I'm not necessarily saying that, Israel's actions are a reaction to Judah, but, like, as Oded says, like, if they're not careful, God's gonna make things worse for them in Israel. And yeah, like, these people really were all of the same general lineage. Now, I mean, a bunch of generations had passed since the kingdoms split at this point, but they still could all trace their ancestry back to Jacob in some way. So, yeah, there's been times when some of God's people have taken over another nation or kingdom or something like that, and in those cases there was less strictness within God's laws about what they could do to the people with their goods and things like that. But I will say they generally weren't supposed to keep a lot. However, there were specific commands, laws even, that had been told to their ancestors regarding, relatives. And this was breaking those commands. So, after this word from the prophet Oded, we get to verse 12. Then some of the leaders of Israel, Azariah, son of Jehohanan, Berechiah, son of Meshillemoth, Jehizkiah, son of Shallum, and Amasa, son of Hadlai, agreed with this and confronted the men returning from battle. "You must not bring the prisoners here," they declared. "We cannot afford to add to our sins and guilt. Our guilt is already great, and the Lord's fierce anger is already turned against Israel." So the warriors released the prisoners and handed over the plunder in the sight of the leaders and all of the people. Then the 4 men just mentioned by name came forward and distributed clothes from the plunder to the prisoners who were naked. They provided clothing and sandals to wear, gave them enough food and drink, and dressed their wounds with olive oil. They put those who were weak on donkeys and took all the prisoners back to their own people in Jericho, the city of palms. Then they returned to Samaria. So ultimately, yeah, the leadership of Israel go along with what Oded said. And, if they wanted the people to even really have a reasonable chance of getting back, it's like, okay, well, we got to make sure that you're fed and protected from the elements a bit. And so, yeah. Note here where it says the leaders of Israel. Here says Ephraim, referring to the northern kingdom of Israel. Interesting. I guess, at least in some cases, that was what the other kingdom was called. In the Hebrew was Ephraim. That was one of the tribes that was within that kingdom, so just like the southern kingdom kind of just got called Judah, even though there was also the tribe of Benjamin within that kingdom. I guess the other tribes eventually decided on one that would kind of be more their representative. I don't know. Or that could just be where the common entrance was going from Judah to the other tribes. Samaria might have been within Ephraim, so if that's their capital, it kind of makes sense that they would lean towards that as the standout tribe. But don't quote me on that. Feel free to look it up yourself and let me know if I'm wrong. But, okay, so people from Judah are returned. Now, it says back to their own people in Jericho. I mean, I guess Jericho was still within that kingdom. It wasn't necessarily the capital city, but, I mean, not all of them would have been from Jerusalem in all likelihood. Anyway, okay. So after they all return, we get to verse 16. At that time, King Ahaz of Judah asked the king of Assyria for help. The armies of Edom had again invaded Judah and taken captives, and the Philistines had raided towns located in the foothills of Judah and in the Negev of Judah. They had already captured and occupied Beth Shemesh, Aijalon, Gederoth, Soko with its villages, Timnah with its villages, and Gimzo with its villages. The Lord was humbling Judah because of King Ahaz of Judah, for he had encouraged his people to sin and had been utterly unfaithful to the Lord. Yep, that pretty much summarizes why all of this was happening to them. The guy who's supposed to be the main leader of the people isn't following God. So, the other people, A, are more likely to follow suit, and B, also end up caught up in the consequences, including even more invasions, more losses, and yeah, again, like, things go up, 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 up for God's people, and then poof. Sharp downturn. That's pretty much just a common thread that you're going to see all throughout the Bible, especially the Old Testament. So, a couple of notes here to look at. In verse 18, he mentions the foothills of Judah. Hebrew says the Shephelah. That was probably the name that was given to it, but the foothills is kind of the geographical area that was. Someone thinking it's a smart idea to turn away from God, right? Yeah. And it only happens, what, like 200 times in the Old Testament? Okay, so there's another note down in verse 19 talking about God humbling Judah because of King Ahaz. Masoretic text reads of Israel, not of Judah. That also appears in verses in verses 23 and 27 of this chapter. The author of Chronicles sees Judah as representative of the true Israel, and that's why it says Israel here potentially instead of Judah in the one source text manuscript thing. When will we ever learn? Oh, right, never. At least not until there's a new heaven and new earth. Okay. So, Ahaz continues to be unfaithful. More losses for Judah. Then we get to verse 20. So when King Tiglath-Pileser of Assyria arrived, he attacked Ahaz instead of helping him. Ahaz took valuable items from the Lord's temple, the royal palace, and from the homes of his officials, and gave them to the king of Assyria as tribute. But this did not help him. Even during this time of trouble, King Ahaz continued to reject the Lord. He offered sacrifices to the gods of Damascus, who had defeated him, for he said, "Since these gods helped the kings of Aram, they will help me too if I sacrifice to them." But instead, they led to his ruin and the ruin of all Judah. The king took the various articles from the temple of God and broke them into pieces. He shut the doors of the Lord's temple so that no one could worship there, and he set up altars and pagan gods in every corner of Jerusalem. He made pagan shrines in all the towns of Judah for offering sacrifices to other gods. In this way, he aroused the anger of the Lord, the God of his ancestors. The rest of the events of Ahaz's reign and everything he did from beginning to end are recorded in the book of the kings of Judah and Israel. When Ahaz died, he was buried in Jerusalem, but not in the royal cemetery of the kings of Judah. Then his son Hezekiah became the next king. And another thought stemming from Seth's most recent comment. Lest we think that we are so much better, like, we have our own hang-ups. None of us are perfect. So, that's why it mentions, I want to say in Romans, that there is none righteous, no, not one. None of us by our own merits would deserve eternity in heaven with God. But, kind of as I mentioned in the previous chapter and the discussion there, like, we don't necessarily need to worry about every single little imperfection in our lives sending us to hell. We need to recognize those things and take them to God, apologize, repent, try to do better, continue growing the relationship with God, And then, hopefully our behavior will fall into place. Still not perfectly, but slowly better over time. If we think we're perfect, then we lied right there. Yeah. That's a good way to put it. Alright, so the king of Assyria attacks Judah instead of helping, despite Ahaz asking for help because of the other people attacking. Note there's Hebrew says Tilgath Pilneser, which is considered a variant spelling, similar enough. A couple of letters swapped, and there's an N added in there. But despite all this trouble, Ahaz continues to deny that his worship of other gods has anything to do with it. Or at least, he sure doesn't act like that has anything to do with it. So, they continue having problems. Man. And not only does he worship other gods, he closed up the temple. So basically, nobody could really worship the Lord their God the way they were supposed to. There might have been some other places where regular offerings were made and, priests could minister to the everyday situations, but there were supposed to be these big festivals and ceremonies and things like that happened on an annual basis at the temple. If it's closed, nothing's happening there. So, yeah. And of course, he goes on to set up all these other altars and shrines and things like that to pagan gods, further plunging Judah into deviance from worshiping God. All right. And likely because of that, when Ahaz is buried, he's not buried in the royal cemetery like his father was. Or even kind of like his grandfather, although the leprosy had him in maybe a separate little corner. But in any case, yeah. Sharp downturn once again in the morality and the all-around worshiping of the Lord within Judah. It takes so little time to ruin what has been built up over years, decades, or even lifetimes. So that is definitely something to watch out for in our own lives, even, and the lives of those around us, potentially. But that's kind of all the more I have to say on 2 Chronicles 28. Okay. And thus ends our Bible study. Thus also kind of ending the plans that I had. Like I said, I was thinking it would be a really short stream. But I am, after wrapping up this live stream, I'm going to go get a shower, get myself ready for bed, take some NyQuil and stuff like that, and hopefully I can get some good sleep and feel better a bit later. Hang on, gotta blow my nose again. Alrighty. So, Seth and anyone else who stopped by, I appreciate you watching the stream, even though it was short. I'm hoping I'll still be back tomorrow with some gaming stuff. I will not reveal which game I'm going to play just yet, because I put a couple of options out there, and I maybe want to leave it a little bit of a surprise. Let's just say one game I was considering went on a discount, the other did not, so I went with the discounted one. Anywho, okay. I hope you're all doing well. Hopefully I will see you soon for another live stream. Feel free to check out edited YouTube videos and such in the meantime. But whatever ends up happening, till next time, stay cool, everybody. Oh, by the way, I should... you see, now we've got a few viewers in. Might be worth a quick raid. Alright, fine. Connecting with our fellow brothers and sisters in Christ is also not something that we should forego just because of illness. Although my nose is wanting to do some funny stuff. Alright, I am not going to think too long about it. We shall raid Deadly Dill Gaming. I don't think we've hopped on his channel in a while. Alright, so till next time, stay cool, everybody.